Good morning to everyone. As it's nearly Purim, tomorrow night is Purim. So we'll begin the Shiur, focus a little bit on Purim. So I have over here a Gemara, Megillah, and I will read out a small piece of Gemara, which is a little bit of a challenging matter, and we'll see how we get through it. The Gemara says in Megillah Daf Zayin Amud Beis, Amar Rava said, Mechayiv inish l'psumi b'purya, adol yada ben orer hamal l'barach marchayim. A person is obligated to become intoxicated on Purim. Rashi says, l'shtaker b'yayin, with wine, until he doesn't know the difference between cursed be Haman and blessed be Mordechai. That's the halacha that the Gemara begins with. Then the Gemara adds to it a story. Rabbi and Rabbi Zera abdus of this Purim b'hadei adadi. Rabbi and Rabbi Zera, two great sages of the Talmud, had a Sudas Purim together. Ibsum, they made this halacha, so they became intoxicated. Come Rabbi, so Rabbi rose, Shachtei Reb Zera, and he slaughtered Reb Zera. Gemara says, Rabbi got up and he slaughtered Reb Zera. Yeah. Then the Gemara continues, Lamachar, the next day, obviously, until the next day, no action taken. He didn't call Hatzalah, he didn't get excited. The next day, Boy Rachme, he prayed, davened for him, and he resurrected him. All better. Lashana, the next year, Amar Lei, so Rabbi said to Reb Zera, perhaps you'd like to join me for Sudas Purim again. We had such a great time last year. Let's do it again. Amar Lei, so Reb Zera said to him, not on every occasion does a miracle happen. So I'm not prepared to risk it, because last year we were lucky, we got the miracle, we were able to resurrect me. And I'm not sure this is going to happen again this year. And therefore, I'd like to take the cautious route, and I'm going to decline the invitation. That's the story. So this story is a very difficult story to swallow. Why? Obviously, Rabbi was a great tzaddik. He was one of the greatest sages of the Talmud. We just had about Rabbi in the Tanya that we learned last week. Rabbi was such a great tzaddik that when in heaven there was a machlekes between Sisa the Rakia and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they called on Rabbi Bar Nachmani to adjudicate. So obviously he was very, very exceptional. We said Malchamalos couldn't get hold of him because he was always studying Torah. So how is it possible that a great man like Rabbi should have stumbled in such a terrible sin as manslaughter? Shachtei Reb Zera. And even and what's most puzzling is that we don't find in the story that Rabbi felt bad about it, or that he did tshuva, or that he had forgiveness. Just the opposite. Next year he said, let's do it again. So it's very puzzling. And to make it even more puzzling, the answer of Reb Zera. Reb Zera didn't say, no way, I'm not going to do this again. He said, there's a little problem. The problem is with the miracle that happened in the end of the story. I'm not 100% confident that the miracle is going to repeat itself. So essentially, I'm game. I'm fine with the whole program. But that last bit about the miracle, I'm not so sure about. So therefore, I'm going to decline the invitation. You would have expected Reb Zera to say, I'm not going anywhere near you on Purim. So the Mefarshim obviously deal with this. The Parshas says that he didn't actually slaughter him. He only injured him in a manner that he was near death. But that doesn't really help me because to injure a fellow Jew is also a very severe sin, especially in such a severe manner that he was near death. There are other Mefarshim that say that it was a show that they made. And in the show, it appeared that he slaughtered him. And some of the people in the audience got all started screeching. And Reb Zayda was overcome with fright from the reaction, and therefore he fainted. So it doesn't really fit the words of the Gemara. First of all, it says, "Come Rabbi v'shachta Reb Zayda." Rabbi arose and he slaughtered Reb Zayda. And he says that the next day he prayed for him and he was mechayim him. He resurrected him. You don't resurrect someone who's not dead. So it's a little difficult to work in the words of the Gemara into this interpretation. The Sam Sefer points out something very interesting. It says there's a Gemara where the Gemara says that the signs of the zodiac, a person is born in a certain time when certain mazolis, certain signs of the zodiac are dominant. It instills certain tendencies in a person. One of the mazolis is called mazel madim. The Gemara says that a person who's born in a time of mazel madim is dominant will be a gvar ashidama. Will be a person that spills blood. And actually, it says in Svarim that a person who's born in that time when that sign of the zodiac is dominant should either become a sheikhet or a male, so he could let out that tendency in something positive. I don't know if it works according to months. Could be there's various mazolis. It has to do also with the hours. I know we don't make kiddush on Friday night certain hours because of mazel madim. So I don't know if in Brot and Shulchan Aruch there's a custom that some people have between 6 and 7. They don't make kiddush because of mazel madim. But those that have that custom, those that don't, those are zu gesund. In any case, we're talking about standard time. It's anyway. We're not going into the details of that minhag right now, but there is. I'm not so clear about how the mazolos work as far as giving people tendencies, which mazolos they are. There's the mazolos of the hours, the mazolos of the months. Anyway, so the Gemara says, "Amar Rabbi Anah b'madim." Rabbi said, "I was born during the dominance of mazel madim." So it means that Rabbi had essentially a tendency towards bloodshed. So it would seem from what the Chazal Sefer is saying that as long as he was sober, he was on top of the situation, he kept himself in check. But when he drank too much, his natural tendency to be engaged in bloodshed came out, and that's why it led to what it did. And that's a very, very, again, very difficult to swallow, because just because a person has a tendency to a certain behavior, it doesn't give him a license to act that way. In fact, the Rambam says clearly that a person has free choice, and even if a person has a tendency in a certain direction, it doesn't mean that he has to act on it. He has the ability, just like Hashem gave him the tendency, Hashem gave him the strength to overcome it, and he has the ability to conduct himself in accordance with the instructions of the Torah. So what kind of an excuse is it for Rabbi to have slaughtered Reb Zayda just because he was born in Mazel Madim? That doesn't seem to go very well. There are Mefarshim that say that it's only a mashal, it's only talking about certain spiritual or mystical realities that are represented by these descriptions. However, it's again, it also has its difficulties, because even though there are certain pieces of Gemara, Nagada, which are explained by the Mefarshim to be alluding to certain spiritual or mystical concepts, however, over here, the Gemara associates it with a halacha. Starts off by saying the halacha is that a person is obligated to get intoxicated and put him to the point where he doesn't know the difference between Aram and a Baruch. Right? And then immediately after that, the Gemara brings a story of Rabbi ben Zayda, which implies that this story is brought as a support to the halacha of the obligation to become intoxicated. Take a look to what extent it went. Rabbi and Zayda made sure to put them together. They fulfilled this obligation. They got intoxicated, and this is what happened. So if it's brought in conjunction with the halacha, it has to be literal. Because if it's not literal, then how can you use it as support for halacha? And especially, there is actually an opinion of Rabbeinu Ephraim, which I think some people here will relate to better. Rabbeinu Ephraim is one of the Rishonim, and he says that the Pshat in the Gemara is the opposite. That the Gemara is refuting Rabbi. Rabbi says it's an obligation to get intoxicated and put him to the point where you don't know the difference between Abraham and Baruch Mordechai. So the Gemara says, look what happened when somebody followed that advice. Rabbi and Reb Zayda made a sort of put them together. They got drunk, and Rabbi slaughtered Reb Zayda. So the Gemara is bringing the story to refute this halacha and saying it's not a good idea to get drunk because look what it could lead to. So if this refutes a halacha, then surely it has to be literal. Because if it's not literal, how can you refute a halacha based on some mystical concept? So it's difficult to say that although everything in the Gemara has mystical dimensions to it and spiritual dimensions to it, but to take this type of a statement out of its literal meaning completely and to say that it only happened on a spiritual plane or only happened on a mystical plane is very difficult in a case when the Gemara brings this story directly in conjunction with a halacha, either according to most opinions as a support for the halacha, or according to the Rabbeinu Ephraim as a refutation for the halacha. Whichever way it is, it must have happened literally to be able to use it in a discussion of halacha. On the other hand, how could you say that such a thing happened? And we don't find that Rabbi was remorseful in any way, did tshuva in any way, corrected it in any way. And he seems to be quite comfortable with going ahead and doing it all over again. So we have a cloud that one of the best ways to answer a question is with another question. So we'll ask another question. It was actually mentioned this past Shabbos in the Kriyas HaTorah, by the way, but it's primarily found in Parshas Shmini and in Parshas Achrei. Famous story with the two sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu. Two sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu. So in Parshas Shmini we learn that they entered into the inner sanctuary of the Mishkan inappropriately, and they lost their lives. And in the words of the pasuk in Parshas Achrei, "Bekarvasam lifnei Hashem vayamuzu." They came close before Hashem and they died. According to the Chaim HaKadosh, they died because they came close before Hashem. We'll get to that soon. So the question is, who are Nadav and Avihu? And what was their sin? So there's various interpretations of what exactly their sin was. But one of the opinions, and it's based and it has a strong basis in the pasuk, is shtuye yayin nichnasu lemikdash. They entered into the inner sanctuary of the Mishkan intoxicated. And because they entered into the inner sanctuary of the Mishkan intoxicated, that's considered something they shouldn't have done. And the proof to that is that immediately after the story of Nadav and Avihu, right afterwards, the pasuk says, "Vayidaber Hashem al Aaron leimer." Hashem spoke to Aaron and said, "Yayin v'sheichar al teish ato b'necha itach." That you and your children, when you go into the Mishkan, you should not drink wine to intoxication. So since immediately after the passing of Nadav and Avihu, the pasuk says the prohibition of entering into the Mishkan intoxicated, so it implies that the passing of Nadav and Avihu had something to do with the fact that they entered into the Mishkan intoxicated. So the question is, who are Nadav and Avihu? Nadav and Avihu were incredible tzaddikim. As we read last Shabbos, when Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu about the consecration of the Mishkan, and he says to him, "B'kroi v'yakodesh," with those that are close to me, I will be sanctified. And this comes into greater detail in Parshas Shmini, when it talks about the passing of Nadav and Avihu. And it says, and Rashi goes through this in detail. Rashi says that Moshe turned to Aaron, and he said, "Aaron Achi, my brother Aaron." After the passing of Aaron's two sons, Nadav and Avihu, immediately afterwards, Moshe turns to Aaron and he says, "Aaron Achi, my brother Aaron, I knew all along that this Mishkan, this sanctuary, is going to be sanctified by those that are close to Hashem. Because Hashem told me already in Parshas Tetzaveh that he alluded that something's going to happen to someone very close to me, to Hashem, which is going to sanctify the Mishkan. So I thought, says Moshe, Hashem didn't give me specific details of what's going to happen. I assume that either something's going to happen to me or something's going to happen to you. Because who's Krevai? Who's those that are close to Hashem? Moshe and Aaron. Could you get better than that? Now I see that they, Nadav and Avihu, are greater than you and I. And he's not just saying this to be nice. It's not politically correct. This is Moshe Emes v'Teirasei Emes. Moshe Rabbeinu represents the essence of truth. He's saying to Aaron, "Heim gedolim mimeni umimeka." They are greater than me and you. So someone that Moshe Rabbeinu could say about them that they're gedolim. And when did he say it? He said it after the event. So what took place with Shtuya Yayin Nichnas L'Mikdash had just happened. And at this point, Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Heim gedolim mimeni umimeka." They're greater than me and you. So how can we understand that two great tzaddikim like Nadav and Avihu would enter into the Mishkan at the first day of the consecration of the Mishkan? They entered into the Mishkan intoxicated. Does it make sense? So one of the explanations is based on the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, who says in Parshas Achrei Mos, explains the words B'karvasam l'fnei Hashem vayamusu, and he says B'karvasam l'fnei Hashem vayamusu, the cause of death was coming close to Hashem. They came so close that their souls expired. And he explains that nimnu milikrev medveikus neimus mesikus yedidus neshikus ad klois nishmeisamehem. They did not hold back from getting closer to the cleaving and sweetness and the pleasantness and the divine kiss until their souls expired and fused with Hashem. Karvasam of Hashem bayamus. So what does it mean? Shtuya yayin nichnas b'mikdash. Yayin, wine, also represents one of the sections of Torah. There's Yeino Shel Torah, the wine of Torah is the secrets of Torah. Soides HaTorah. Hazal say, Nichnas Yayin Yatsa Soid. When the wine enters, the secrets come. So wine and secret are associated with each other. And the gematria of Yayin, Yud, Yud, Nun, Yud is 10, and Nun is 50, together it makes 70. Soid is Samach Vav Dalet. Samach is 60, Vav is 6, Dalet is 4, also 70. So Yayin and Soid have the same numerical value, and they are connected. So the secrets of Torah are called Yayin. Yeino Shel Torah, the wine of Torah. Shtuya Yayin Nichnasu L'Mikdash means they became intoxicated with the secrets of Torah. They shared with one another incredible, mystical, deep concepts of Torah. And they went deeper and deeper and deeper. And they felt this, they were intoxicated with this tremendous closeness to the Almighty that came as a result of their exposure to secrets of Torah on a very, very expansive and very deep level. And this led to at Kleis Nishmeisamehem, Kleis HaNefesh. Their souls expired, and they fused with Hashem. Karvatam Ufnei Hashem Vayamusu. Now, was there any wine involved? After all, it says in the pasuk right afterwards, "Davar Hashem al Anu Leimer Yain v'Sheichar al Teishta." From this, we know the halacha that a kohen is not allowed to enter into the Mishkan or the Beis Hamikdash to perform the Avodah when he's intoxicated with wine. So if there was no wine over here, there was only wine of Torah, why do we associate it with Yain? With Yain V'Sheichar al Teishta? So the Shiur HaKadosh says that the fact that we find great tzaddikim who in certain great feasts drank a lot of wine, it was in order to facilitate the revelation of Torah in a greater and a more expansive manner. And as a result of the drinking of wine, it facilitated the exchange of Torah thoughts in a more expansive manner. And especially the secrets of Torah, which normally one would hold back on. So the purpose of the drinking of the wine was to enable the secrets of the Torah to flow freely. So Nadav and Avihu entered intoxicated by the wine of Torah, but in order to facilitate that experience, they also drank wine. The drinking of the physical wine was a means to achieve the drinking of the spiritual wine in the fullest sense. So the Vayamusu came to Karvasam Ufnei Hashem through their closeness to Hashem. And actually at that point, there wasn't a prohibition yet, Yain V'Sheichar al Teishta. So you could actually argue that they didn't do anything wrong because they weren't prohibited from drinking wine at that point. That prohibition was only given after their passing. Perhaps they reached the highest level that was available to them by sharing those secrets of Torah and becoming intoxicated with secrets of Torah to the point where they were so intensely involved. They felt the mesikus, yedidus, neimus, neshikus, akleis nishmeisamehem. They achieved an incredible fusion with the Almighty and His Torah and the secrets of His Torah. Through the secrets of His Torah. B'karvasam l'fnei Hashem, they got so close to Hashem vayamusu that they died. Their souls expired. Kleis HaNefesh. And that was facilitated by physical drinking of wine as well. That also put them in the right frame of mind to be able to get that full experience. Now, if this is the case, but as far as Nadav and Avihu are concerned, then we can now take this and get a better understanding of the story of Rabbi and Reb Zera. Rabbi and Reb Zera made Sudas Purim together. Come Rabbi. So Rabbi stood up. Why is it important to know that he stood up? First of all, the Gemara says, Ifsu, they got intoxicated. Now, as far as the story of Rabbi misbehaving, would have been sufficient if Rabbi got intoxicated. Why is it important to know that they both got intoxicated? Because the Gemara is telling us that there was a process that was taking place over here where Rabbi and Reb Zera were both exchanging secrets of Torah, Yenish of Torah, to the point of intoxication. So Ifsum, they both got intoxicated. Come Rabbi, Rabbi rose, meaning Rabbi rose to a very high madrega in this experience of becoming intoxicated with the spirit, with the secrets of Torah. V'shachtei Reb Zera, and he slaughtered Reb Zera. What does it mean he slaughtered Reb Zera? Chazal say on the word v'shachat, ein v'shachat ela umashach, that the word shchita literally means to draw. We know that when we shecht an animal, you don't stab the animal. You have to draw the chalaf along the throat of the animal. So the word shchita means to draw. So come Rabbi rose to a very, very high madrega in his dveikus HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the Seidos HaTorah, and he shared that, he imposed that on Reb Zera. V'shachtei Reb Zera, and he drew Reb Zera's neshama right out of him. With this very intense experience of exposure to the secrets of Torah, to the point of Klois HaNefesh, to the point that Reb Zera's neshama expired. So Reb Zera now rose to the highest levels, like Nadav and Avihu, fused with the essence of Hashem. Now, on Purim, that's fine, because that's an appropriate way to conduct oneself on Purim, to become totally intoxicated with the secrets of Torah, to the point of complete ascending to a higher realm completely, of divesting of the physical. And however, problem is, there's a purpose of being in this world. Our purpose of being in this world is that we should transform the physical realm into a holy place. We always say, to make for the Almighty a dwelling place in the lowest realm. If Reb Zera's neshama is going to sit in Gan Eden, how's he going to be able to fulfill the purpose of his existence? So on Purim, that wasn't a problem, because that's the appropriate behavior on Purim. But Lamachar came the next day, Rabbi wakes up the next day and he says, I have a problem over here. Reb Zera needs to get on with the job of fulfilling his mission in this world, to make this physical world a holy place, to make it a holy place for Hashem. And his neshama is in Gan Eden, his body's over here. How's he going to go about it? So what did Rabbi do? He was mispalo. And he resurrected him. He drew his neshama back down into his body so he can be alive once again and get on with the job. Yeah? So now the Zera has the best of both worlds. He had this incredible, lofty spiritual experience of Klois HaNefesh, the total expiration of the soul, in the highest realms. So he really had a delightful experience, spiritual, delightful experience at the highest level. And now he has also the benefit of his neshama returning to his body, and he can get on with the job of bringing it with greater intensity. Because after such an experience, can you imagine how animated Reb Zera now was to take this new passion that he had for spreading godliness in the world? So it was great. So next year, Rabbi comes along to Reb Zera and he says, "You remember what we did last year? It was incredible, wasn't it? Let's do it again." So Reb Zera says, and why did Rabbi want to do it again? So it could be because Rabbi figured that over the course of the year, Reb Zera, let me just go back for a moment. Why, if Rabbi was the one who shachtei Reb Zera, he's the one who shared those incredible secrets and imposed that very intense level of spiritual ecstasy on Reb Zera, why didn't Rabbi expire? Right? So one of the possible answers is that Rabbi's capacity was greater than Reb Zera's capacity. Rabbi, the word Rabbi in Aramaic means great. The word ze'era in Aramaic means small. So Rabbi and Reb Zera, Rabbi had great capacity, and Reb Zera had smaller capacity. So the same secrets of Torah that Rabbi was able to cope with, for Reb Zera, it was an overwhelming experience that led to Klais HaNefesh, not the expiration of his soul. So why does Rabbi invite Reb Zera again next year? Could be for one of two reasons. Either Rabbi is assuming that over the course of the year, Reb Zera has grown to the point where he'll be able to handle it this year. Or even if he doesn't handle it, Rabbi knows that he has the power to resurrect him. And he can have the best of both worlds, just like he did last year. What does Reb Zera say to Rabbi? Reb Zera says to Rabbi, that would be incredible. I would love to do that. As long as I'm guaranteed, for sure, that my neshama will be able to return back into the body and continue its mission. But he says, you don't imagine what a delight it is to be in that state. And for the neshama to be convinced to come back into the physical body after such an experience, you need an incredible miracle. So the miracle happened last year. But I'm not sure that you'll be able to convince my neshama to come back down after such an experience again. So since there's a concern, maybe the neshama will remain in that very lofty state and not be able to reinvest itself in the body and get on with its mission. So I'm going to have to forego on the incredible delight that I would love to experience because of the concern that maybe I'm going to end up in that state rather than in this state and not be able to fulfill my mission. So my mission of my commitment to fulfilling Hashem's purpose that Hashem put me in this world for takes precedence. So I'm not going to risk, I'm going to be cautious, and I'm not going to risk doing this thing over again because I'm not sure about the miracle part. So now it all makes sense. Now, was there wine? Rashi says, Nishtakru b'yayin. Just like by the other Lavir, there was wine. There was wine in order to bring them, as we said before from the Shalah, in order to facilitate that flowing of secrets of Torah in an uninhibited manner. Therefore, they drank physical wine, and the physical wine facilitated the flow of the wine of Torah. The Shulchan Aruch ruled that on Purim, one doesn't have to be concerned that overdoing the exposure to secrets of Torah will have any negative ramifications. So it's considered 100% okay to intensely invest oneself and put him in the secrets of Torah, and one doesn't have to be concerned that this will have a negative ramification. This is actually connected with what it says in the Gemara, Arba nichnasu lepardes. There were 4 great people that entered into the orchard. What does the orchard mean? The orchard means an exposure to secrets of Torah. And it says that each one of them, or 3 out of 4, had some kind of a negative side effect. While Rabbi Akiva nichnas b'shalom v'yatza b'shalom. Rabbi Akiva entered in peace and came out in peace. And the question is, the difference between Rabbi Akiva and the others is not the way they entered. They all entered in peace. Rabbi Akiva came out in peace. So why do we say Rabbi Akiva nichnas b'shalom v'yatza b'shalom? We should just say Rabbi Akiva yatza b'shalom. And the answer is that the reason why Rabbi Akiva was yatza b'shalom was because his entry was with a different perspective. Nichnas b'shalom, which means a person can enter into this realm of the thrill and the hype of going into very, very spiritual heights of induced by exposure to Kabbalah and secrets of Torah, just for the thrill, just for the feel, for the high. And then it can be very dangerous. However, if one understands that one's purpose of existence is to make this world a dwelling place for Hashem, the most important thing is the action of Torah and mitzvahs. The only thing is that Torah and mitzvahs has to be filled and animated by passion. So through having this this journey into the worlds of mysticism, one can absorb a greater passion, greater intensity that will help one fulfill one's mission in this world better. So it really depends on how you enter to begin with. Rabbi Akiva understood what the goal was. So since he understood what the goal was, he entered in such a manner to make sure that it comes through safely. And therefore, nichnas b'shalom, because he entered peacefully, therefore yatsa b'shalom, he came out peacefully. If one enters into such an experience just looking for the thrill and for the high, but is not focused on the goal of fulfilling Hashem's mission in this world, then it could chas v'shalom lead a person into various situations which will not have a happy ending. So because Rabbi Akiva was nichnas b'shalom, therefore it's yatsa b'shalom. So on Purim, there is an opportunity. The Shulchan Aruch paskins that it's okay to get intoxicated on Purim. Not only okay, it's encouraged. To the point one doesn't know the idea of the difference in Arer Haman and Baruch Mordechai. And if you remember last week, we explained the idea of not knowing the difference in Arer Haman and Baruch Mordechai is the idea of being intensely committed to the values of Torah and mitzvahs to the point of lo yada, to the point where it's higher than reason, higher than understanding. Whether I do understand or I don't understand. This is what the Torah says. I'm in it all the way. Bain Arer Haman, whether it's the negative, what the Torah says is forbidden, what the Torah says is cursed be Haman. Ubain Baruch Mordechai, whether it's what Torah says, Baruch Mordechai, that Mordechai is blessed, whichever way it is, I'm in it all the way. It's an absolute commitment that transcends reason. So this experience of becoming intoxicated with the secrets of Torah will only intensify that commitment. It will only give the person the ability from Purim to be reinvigorated with new passion and new drive to better fulfill their purpose in this world of making this world a holy place and making the world a dwelling place for Hashem. Yes.
And not everyone. I mean, a lot of Muslim people they will drink, but not go into the they just drink for themselves. I mean, it's a mixed case. They're happy to drink, but there is nothing like, you know.
Okay, so the question over here was that this works very well for Rabbi and Abzeda and Nadav and Avihu or in such a madrega that they drank in order for the Seder Saptera to flow. What happens when you're dealing with an ordinary person? So the answer is like this. If a person drinks in a measured way in order to bring themselves to a level of stronger commitment and stronger dedication to the values of Purim, which are Yeshnei Am Echad, that the Jewish people are an Am Echad, they're a nation that their mission in this world is to make Hashem Echad a reality on earth. And the values of Ahavas Yisrael that Purim stands for. As we know, the mitzvahs of Purim are all about joining together, that we're an Am Echad, through Mishleach Manes, we have Ahavas Yisrael, Matoras Lav Yenim is about Ahavas Yisrael, so this Purim coming together is again Ahavas Yisrael. So if the idea is that the person should become more passionately involved in the Almighty's agenda, so it seems that Purim has a special koyach that it'll be okay. It'll be good. If the person is looking for an excuse to behave chas v'shalom like a guy and to drink not in a holy way, not in a Yiddish way, then I don't think that has anything to do with Purim. Purim is a holy day. In fact, it says in the Kisvei Harizal that Yom Kippur is called Yom Kippurim because it's a day which is almost as holy as Purim. Purim is the height of all. So Purim is a very, very special time, and it's a time for intense Kedusha. And the Kedusha is not only like Yom Kippur, the way you get to an intense level of Kedusha is by refraining from being involved in the physical world. And on Purim is such a great intensity of Kedusha that you can encompass, you can include the physical realm in your dedication to Kedusha. So you can eat and drink and be merry, and that itself becomes part of Avodas Hashem and strengthens and intensifies one's commitment to godliness and Yiddishkeit. But obviously it has to be done in the right way and for the right reasons. If it's not done in the right way, it's not for the right reasons, then it shouldn't be done.
You could drink Adar Yoda, right? People get sick.
So you have to first remember what the deeper meaning of Adar Yoda that we spoke about before. And if the being on a little bit more higher level brings the person to a more intense form of commitment beyond reason, then it's a good thing. As I said before, if it's an excuse to behave in a way which is not appropriate for Yiddishkeit on any day of the year, and surely not on Purim, then I don't think that's what it's about. So one has to know where it's appropriate, where it's not appropriate. I can only tell you which is one. Let me just, before I take your question, let me say one thing. I remember at the Rebbe's Fabrengen, Purim, the Rebbe would Fabrengen after Purim, at night, after the Suda, 9:30 at night. It was Fabrengen went on until 3-4 in the morning. And it was very freiliche Verbringen. And there were some times that the Rebbe asked for one volunteer to be mitzi everyone with Adonai Yada. And he said, but it shouldn't be from the Talmidim. It shouldn't be from the Talmidim, from the students of the yeshiva. It should be a mature person, an older person, and one person's volunteer for everybody.
Like the boys, the yeshiva boys again.
So it's there are everybody. People need to get guidance on what is appropriate for whom and when. If you have the understanding of what it's all about, that it's really a very, very holy concept, as we've explained over here, that itself puts a person in the right frame. Because you understand that if it's not leading you in that direction, you're missing the point. It's the wrong yomta for you. It's not the time for it. I don't know how you measure Adul Yada. You don't measure Adul Yada. There were certain Purims where there was a little bit more. Generally not. Yes, I'm sorry.
Those three people went to go to the right side on the level
They were people of a high level, but people of a high level also have to be focused on what the tachlis is. And not being focused on what the tachlis is even if a person is spiritually inclined, that's not sufficient. You also have to be focused and know that at the end of the day, Hashem's agenda is more important than my agenda. And if I'm using whatever means are available to me as a means of getting more strongly involved in the Almighty's agenda, then that's one thing. But if I'm deviating from the mission and setting my own agenda, then that's a dangerous thing. As we learned last week about Shaul, he also deviated from the mission and made his own agenda. Would you say the same about Nadav and Avihu? So there's actually different opinions or not only different mahalchim, different approaches on how to understand the story of Nadav and Avihu. Chazal usually describe it as the sin of Nadav and Avihu. So obviously there's some criticism of Nadav and Avihu. However, at certain levels, as I mentioned before, the fact that the Parsha of Yair Meshechar Al Teish only came afterwards leaves room to say that when we say the sin of Nadav and Avihu, we mean what would have been a sin had they have been a little bit later on the line. But where they were and when they were, there is room to say that not only was it not a sin, but Rashi actually says in Parshas Shmini, she is Kaddish Habayis b'miudav Shalom, which means that the Mishkan received an additional sanctity as a result of what Nadav and Avihu did, which is a discussion for itself. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't daven for them to be Mechayim Eisim then. Okay, good point. Okay, we're going to move on to Tanya. So we're still on Daf Hey. Numbers on top of the page is Hey. Number on the bottom of the page is 2. And I believe that we are about 2/3 down from the top of the page. The line begins Sadik v'Rasha Loika Amar, and there's a full stop. Yeah, I hope everybody has the place. Okay, it's about 10 or 12 lines from the bottom of the page, and we're up to the words V'Gam Lahavin Mahus Madregas Habein. So we learned last week that people are divided into, generally speaking, 3 categories, more broadly speaking, 5 categories. Generally speaking, 3 categories, Tzaddik, Rasha, and Beinani. And more generally speaking, we had, and more in greater detail, is Tzaddik V'Tovloi, Tzaddik V'Raloi, Rasha V'Tovloi, Rasha V'Raloi, and in the middle was the Bein. So we were trying to figure out what did Rabbi mean when he said, for example, I am a Beinani. Rabbi, at the end of the day, was a man who was very, very particular about his behavior, and to the extent that he never stopped studying Torah for a second. How could he have suspected himself to be a Beinani? If a Beinani means somebody is 50-50, Surely Rabbi wasn't a candidate to be a Beinoni. We also pointed out the Gemara says, Beinonim zeh v'zeh shoifton. And a Beinoni is judged by both his godly soul or his Yetzer Tov and his Yetzer Hara, rather than ruled by. So we also have to get clarity on what that means. Why did Hazal use the expression shoifton rather than rules him? V'gam lahavin mahus madregas haBeinoni. We also have to get a better understanding of what is this Beinoni? What is he like? What's it all about? Surely it can't mean someone who has 50% merits and 50% sins. Because if that's what it means, how could Rabbi have made the mistake to think that he was a Beinoni? As we know, that his mouth never stopped reciting words of Torah, to the extent that when the Malach HaMavis was sent to summon him because they needed him to adjudicate between him, between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Sifta Derekiah, Malach HaMavis couldn't approach him because he never stopped studying Torah. So how could Rabbi have even mistakenly thought that he is a Beinoni if Beinoni means someone has 50% sins? So that's definitely not a possibility that Beinoni would mean someone with 50% sins. Then there's an additional question, taking the story of Rabbi out of the picture completely. Just a simple question. When a person does a sin, doesn't matter how many sins, even one sin. When a person sins, basically when a person sins, he's telling the Almighty, mind your own business, don't tell me what to do, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I don't care what you think. You can tell me this is forbidden, and I'm going to do it anyway. You can tell me I need to do this, and I'm not going to listen to you. Right? So at that moment, he is ripping off from himself the yoke of heavenly kingship. That makes a person a Rasha. He's going as far from Hashem as he possibly can. 180 degrees, right? Hashem's will is over here, and he's going 100% the opposite direction. So he's not a Beinoni at that moment, he's a Rasha. When a person is doing an Aveda, actively doing an Aveda, he definitely is considered an absolute Rasha. So you might say, maybe a tzaddik is someone who never sinned. A Rasha is someone who is sinning currently. And a Beinoni is someone who once sinned, but since repented. So in the brackets, the Alter Rebbe forewarns this and says, if after he sinned and ripped off from himself the yoke of heavenly kingship and entered into the framework of a Rasha, then if he did tshuva afterwards, nikra tzaddik gomer. Our sages refer to a person who sinned and did tshuva as a tzaddik gomer. He's an absolute tzaddik because he's completely regretted what he did. He's made a firm resolve that from now on he's going to only do what Hashem tells him to do. So he's completely transformed himself, and now he's a tzaddik again. And we actually learn this from a halach. There's a halach in Masechta Kedushin. It's brought in Shulchan Aruch that if a man approaches a woman and gives her something of value and says to her, "You are betrothed to me, kodeshesli, on condition she'ani tzaddik gomer, on condition that I am a tzaddik gomer." So if I am a tzaddik gomer, then this kedushin should be effective. Yeah, and the woman accepts it, and then she has second thoughts. So she goes to Bezdin, and she says, "What do I do? This is what happened." So what's the first thing Bezdin should do? Send out a fact-finding mission to find out if this person is actually a tzaddik gomer or not. Because if he's a tzaddik gomer, then the kedushin is valid. If he's not a tzaddik gomer, the kedushin is invalid because it was made with a condition. It was made with a clause. So Bezdin sends out a fact-finding mission, and they come back and they say that this person actually eats on Yom Kippur, and he eats in McDonald's, not the one in Argentina with the Hechsher, yeah, and he does all kinds of bezels and Alashter, every Aveda in the book, yeah. So you would think you're off the hook, right? Not a tzaddik gomer. So the halacha is that this woman requires a get. Why? Very simple. Because how are we to know that a second before he gave her the kedushin, perhaps he did tshuva? If he did tshuva, then he became a tzaddik gomer. So when he gave her the kedushin, al manas shani tzaddik gomer, the kedushin was 100% valid. So since we can't prove that he didn't do tshuva before he gave her the kedushin, so she needs a gift. So we see clearly that a person can do avedas, and if he does true tshuva on the avedas, he's now considered a tzaddik gadol.
You're trying to be thinking positive, like maybe he did tshuva and he wasn't tzaddik, and therefore he doesn't have to give her again.
No, maybe he did tshuva and he became a tzaddik, and therefore the kedushin that he gave on condition that I am a tzaddik was valid kedushin.
Yeah, it's fine, then don't give her again.
Then, sorry?
Then she won't need a get.
But that she doesn't want to get, she doesn't have to have one. But what if she does want to get? She can't just go scot-free because the condition was not applied. The condition might have been applied. If he did tshuva and he's a tzaddik gomer, now the condition was met. Condition was met at that point. Yeah. So the point that we're just trying to bring out over here is that you can't say that a Beinoni is someone who once sinned and since did tshuva, because if he truly did tshuva, then he's a tzaddik gomer.
But surely somebody that did tshuva wouldn't be bragging about it. He would be modest about it.
Fine. It's not a question of he's. Let me just. It's not a question of he's bragging or not bragging. This is a legal question. He says there's an acquisition made over here, and he says to her, "You should be mekudesh to me on condition that I am a tzaddik gomer." So if he is a tzaddik gomer, then the condition is valid, is effective. If he's not a tzaddik gomer, the condition is not effective because it was made with a condition, right? We just have to know: was he at that moment a tzaddik gomer or not? So we would have thought that if we do a proper fact-finding mission, we can find out. So the halacha is, no, you cannot find out because you don't know what's going on in the mind and heart of another person. And if for one moment before he gave her the kedushin, he did tshuva, that would make him a tzaddik gomer. So all that it concerns us at this moment is that in helping us define what a Beinoni is, the option of saying someone who once sinned and now no longer sins because he did tshuva cannot be considered a Beinoni, because if he did a proper tshuva, he became a tzaddik gomer. And if he didn't do a proper tshuva, then he's a rasha. That's not a Beinoni. Sorry, was there another question?
Sorry, but then we don't know what's the definition of complete tshuva. We don't know. Hashem knows.
Fine. So since there's always a doubt, so we don't want chas v'shalom a situation where this woman is in a doubtful situation of doing something that she shouldn't be doing. So she should get a get. Okay? Right. Not a good idea. Now, you might say, we know that we have two types of mitzvahs, right? We have biblical mitzvahs and we have rabbinic mitzvahs. We have biblical prohibitions and we have rabbinic prohibitions. So maybe there's where the Beinoni is. Maybe the tzaddik is someone who is super frum and keeps all the biblical laws as well as the rabbinic laws. The rasha is someone who rejects even the biblical laws. And maybe the Beinoni is somebody who would never transgress a biblical law. And when it comes to the Rabbanon, they're a little bit lenient. Maybe that's a Beinoni. So the Alter Rebbe continues and he says, even someone who transgresses a minor, light rabbinic prohibition, there is two sources in the Talmud, in the second chapter of Yevamis and the first chapter of Nida, where it's very clear that even transgressing a rabbinic commandment would make one a rasha. And it's very simple because the Torah says, do not deviate from anything the Chachamim will instruct you. And if a person says, second day Yom Tov, it's only midrabanan, I don't do that. You're not following what the instructions of the Chachamim. So you're clearly going against the will of Hashem. Hashem says, don't deviate from anything the Chachamim will instruct you. So if you deviate from what the Chachamim instruct, you're going against Hashem's will. The person says, I know I wouldn't eat something which is biblically forbidden, but bishul akum, not so terrible. It's only midrabanan. Yeah, it is terrible because the Chachamim said it's forbidden, so it's forbidden. And wine, which was produced by a guy without the proper supervision, is even if the guy is not an idol worshiper and therefore it's not biblically forbidden, it's only rabbinically forbidden. It's rabbinically forbidden, so the Torah doesn't allow it. And if you go against the Torah and you do things that are rabbinically forbidden, that makes you a rasha, not a Beinoni.
But what happens if you're doing these things, but somebody is telling you, I'm not going to teach you, that you're not doing them?
So you are misinformed, and therefore you can't be held culpable because you didn't know. You're an anus. It's like you're in a situation where you weren't exposed to the truth. The truth wasn't made available to you, but it doesn't make it the right thing. So somebody else who does know, for them doing it, that would make them term them as a Rasha. Sure.
Rabbi, is that the same one that you mentioned before?
Yes. I mentioned it before. That's what made Akasha so great. That how could Rabbi, who was such a great man, have stumbled in a sin like blood, like murder, manslaughter. Yeah, true. And here's the thing. Rabbi and Zayda, yeah. Now, we all know that in addition to our obligation to keep Torah mitzvahs ourselves, we also have an obligation to look after others. So if I see someone behaving in a way which is not consistent with the Torah obligates me. You should surely reprimand your fellow. So this might be the solution. Maybe the tzaddik is someone who does the right thing himself and also uses his influence to encourage others to do the right thing. The Rasha is someone who breaks the rules himself. And the Beinoni is someone who doesn't chas v'shalom break any rules himself. He's always doing the right thing, never doing the wrong thing. But he doesn't get involved with other people. He minds his own business. So he's missing out on the mitzvah of echech samisecha. Maybe that's the Beinoni. Says the Alter Rebbe, if someone has the opportunity to reprimand in a positive and effective way, and he didn't take that opportunity and he didn't reprimand where he should have. Nikra Rasha, the Gemara clearly in Shvuah says that for not reprimanding where it's appropriate to reprimand, you're breaking a rule of the Torah, and you're also considered a Rasha. So the Beinoni can't be someone who does the right thing himself but doesn't reprimand others, because that is a clear obligation in the Torah, and not fulfilling the obligations in the Torah makes you a Rasha, not a Beinoni. I remember once Rabbi Pekarsky, the Rosh Yeshiva in 770, his minor Rosh Yeshiva in 770, was once visiting here in England, and I think it was Yutas Kislev, and there was an opportunity, and he was speaking in Beis Lubavitch. And he shared a very, very beautiful Dvar Torah. The famous Gemara, the Gemara says that Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai, before his passing, his students came to visit him and they found him crying. They asked him, the light of Israel, the powerful pillar, the hammer, why are you crying? So he told them that, he said that if I was being taken before a king of flesh and blood to be judged, and if he would arrest me, his imprisonment would not be forever. If he arrests me, if he imprisons me, his imprisonment will not be forever, because he's only a king of flesh and blood. You never know what tomorrow is going to bring. If he puts me to death, his death is not forever. This world is another world. I would be very frightened. I'm being judged by a king that has the ability to imprison me and to put me to death. I would be very frightened. So now that I'm being taken before the Almighty, Melech Malchem Lach HaKadosh Baruch Hu, She'im Ishrani, if he imprisons me, his imprisonment is forever. And if he puts me to death, his death is forever. And besides that, he says, I have two paths open before me, one leading to Gan Eden and one leading to Gehenna. And I don't know which path they're going to take me down. So you expect me not to be crying? That's the Gemara. So everybody wants to know. Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai, 40 years he studied Torah nonstop. And 40 years he taught Torah nonstop. And 40 years he was the leader of Klal Yisrael. Busy every moment with looking after the needs of Klal Yisrael. He's worried about which path he's going to be taken. Yeah, so this is an old question, and there's a lot of discussion about this. So Rabbi Pekarsky said a beautiful word. He said the word olam, we translate it as eternal, right? But olam also means the world. So he said, if I was being taken before a king of flesh and blood, who is going to hold me responsible only for my actions, right? Any surah isur olam, if he imprisons me, not imprisoning me for the whole world, he's only going to imprison me for my own actions. Mimisani, if he puts me to death, he doesn't put me to death for the whole world's actions. He only puts me to death for my own actions. So then I wouldn't be so worried, because I know I'm okay. I know exactly how I led my life. I can give a detailed accounting for every day of my life, exactly what I did. So I wouldn't be so worried. But now I'm being taken before the King of Kings, the Almighty, If he imprisons me or puts me to death, he's going to do it for the whole world because I'm responsible for everyone that I could have influenced and I didn't. He's going to hold me responsible. Now, I'm not sure exactly how well I did on that. So I have a whole different perspective. Obviously, that's not the simple meaning in the Gemara, but it's a beautiful pshat. But the Gemara clearly says that the mitzvah of is an obligation, and if one doesn't fulfill this obligation properly, one is considered a rasha, because you're not doing what Hashem wants you to do. Obviously, it has to be done in the right way, and it has to be done in an effective way, and sometimes it's shem mitzvah leimar davar hanishma, just like it's a mitzvah to say something which will be heard, it's a mitzvah not to say something which will not be heard. There's a lot of details in this mitzvah, but when the mitzvah does apply, then it's clearly an obligation. So what's the other option? The other option is we can say, well, 1 minute. There's two types of mitzvahs. There's positive mitzvahs and negative mitzvahs. Perhaps if somebody breaks a negative mitzvah by doing an action which goes against the will of Hashem, that would make him a rasha. But if somebody is lax in fulfilling positive mitzvahs, maybe that's only a beinoni. So the Alter Rebbe goes further and he says, how much more so? If a person is not fulfilling a positive mitzvah which he has the opportunity to fulfill. Kamei, for example, the mitzvah of studying Torah at every opportunity. And if a person doesn't use an opportunity which is available to him to study Torah and he doesn't use it. Sha'olav Darshan Azal, we just turned over to page 10. Sha'olav Darshan Azal, Kidbar Hashem Bazav Agamer. About whom our sages say that one who has about such a situation, our sages have applied the pasuk, for he has shamed the word of Hashem. Right? Imagine that person has a Gemara open in front of him, and the Gemara has the teachings of the wisdom of Hashem. And he's discussing the football. It's a bazillion to the word of Hashem. Yeah. So an opportunity to study Torah, which is not used out, is called Bar Hashem Bazo. He had although the literal meaning of the pasuk is talking about something else, but our Chachamim applied this pasuk. It's Bar Hashem Bazo. He's shamed the word of Hashem. The gamer he cut to goddess. The gamer he should surely be cut off. So if Chazal use such stringent words to describe someone who had an opportunity to do a mitzvah and he didn't do it, then surely someone in this situation is considered a rasha more than someone who transgresses a rabbinic prohibition. And we said before that the person who transgresses a rabbinic prohibition is a rasha, not a beinoni. So someone who omits a positive mitzvah is surely also a rasha. So it must be that a beinoni is someone who has no sins on his record whatsoever, not even the sin of wasting an opportunity from studying Torah. And now suddenly it clicked. It clicks. Rabbi said, for example, I'm a beinoni, right? Rabbi's the one who never wasted a moment from learning Torah. That's why Rabbi thought that maybe he's a beinoni, even though Rabbi never wasted a minute from learning Torah. Because we just proved that a beinoni must have 100% clear record, because if not, he's a rasha, not a beinoni. The question is, why is he not a tzaddik? If he's so perfect, why do we only call him a beinoni? Why not a tzaddik? And this brings us back to the discussion we had a long time ago about the two missions that we have in this world. We have a mission in this world to do the right thing, and we have a mission in this world to be the right thing. Being the right thing is not measured by what you do. It's measured by what's going on inside you. Where are your desires? Where are your passions? Where are your interests? As we're going to see further. But in any case, what we've clarified is that doing the right thing can only be considered 50% of the job. Because someone who does everything right, to the extent that he's not even over on bittul Torah, is only called a beinoni. So obviously there's another 50% somewhere, which is very significant. And why does the Alter Rebbe introduce his work of Tanya with this whole discussion? Because the point is, the emphasis Baal Shem Tov puts on working on our inner self. You have to get rid of the evil from within yourself, not just from your actions. Obviously, your actions have to be in accordance with Torah. Obviously, your speech has to be in accordance with Torah. Obviously, your thoughts have to be in accordance with Torah. But the question is, what's going on underneath the surface? Where's your passion? Where's your interest? Where's your excitement? Where's your enthusiasm? A person has to work on himself to transform himself also internally. That his excitement and his passion and his interest and his desires to be with Einoid Milvade, there's nothing else except Hashem. So obviously, the first thing, the first aid is you have to make sure that every deed and every word and every thought is as it should be. But one has to realize that there's much more to it than that.
Question. We're talking about the Rabbi food. So when we keep saying Shemini Atzeret Simcha Torah 2 days, and people are now seeing Eretz Yisrael, and so well, they only keep one there. Or I've got a home in Israel, but I'm not going there this year. Can you?
Okay, so you're asking a very good question. Okay, the question was here about the second day Yom Tov. We spoke about the importance of keeping rabbinic law, and the question was about the second day Yom Tov, and it's a little bit confusing because the Chutz La'aretz we keep 2 days Yom Tov, and Eretz Yisrael they don't keep 2 days Yom Tov. What about a person who has a home here and a home there? There's a lot of shyness. Okay, so let me clarify. First of all, when we say that the rabbinic law is that in Chutz La'aretz, where traditionally 2 days Yom Tov were kept in the time of the Sanhedrin, in order not to be on the safe side, we should keep 2 days. And in Eretz Yisrael, where in the time of the Sanhedrin they only kept 1 day, you only keep 1 day. Now the question is, what if a person's on a borderline case? He's traveling, he's left his family behind, he hasn't left his family behind, he has 2 houses, he's usually here, he's usually there. So for that, the Eibishter helped us with Rabbi, who study halacha, and they take each situation and they evaluate it according to halacha, and they paskin. And just like in every other, if a person has a shaila, if some milk came into your fleishika pot, and you have to know if the pot is kosher, requires koshering, doesn't require koshering, you ask a shaila and you follow the Rav's ruling. In these matters, also one has to ask a shaila, follow the Rav's rulings, and that is the will of Hashem. And when you do what Hashem wants, you're on the right line, right path. If you do the opposite of what Hashem wants because it's more convenient, and it doesn't really matter what the Rav paskin, then you're going against the will of Hashem. Let's keep it simple. Okay, so I want to wish everybody a very, very freilich Purim, and the best recipe for making it freilich will be that immediately Mashiach should come, Klal Yisrael will be redeemed and liberated from Galus and brought to Yerushalayim, Beis Hamikdash HaShlishi, and over there we'll have the real freilich Purim.
Thank you very much.